this Four Pees Café. See, there's just a few more people coming in. We're gonna get started. Okay, so today's cafe is about visual inspection in print production. Now, we also call that content compare or automated proofreading. And that's what we're going to have a look at today. As usual, this is a Four Pees Café. Feel free to unmute, speak up, share your opinion, and participate in this whole story. So today's special. This will become clear later in the presentation, why there is a big penguin on the screen. The menu for today: why would you do automated proofreading or visual inspection in your system? Where would you do it? How would you do it? And then we're going to have a practical demo of both a graphics inspection and a text inspection using one of these automated proofreading systems. So the why. Well, that's a pretty easy one. Computers are fast and people make mistakes. That's the two key points. Now, when we're talking about automated inspection or just proofreading in general, the non-automated way, so the classic way to do proofreading, is to give a person two versions of a document and have them look at their two documents and tell you what the difference is. So they grab their good file, they grab the new file that they received, and they're asked, hey, can you check this document? Can you see if this is correct? They go over it line by line, and they look for typos, they look for differences, and they say, oh, I found a few differences, and you can go fix those. Okay, but that takes a while. If we're talking about a small wrapper for a candy bar, that might be okay. If we're talking about an insert for medication, then suddenly you're spending 2 hours reading those files, trying to find out what's different about it. And you're probably gonna miss a few things. So we want to use computers because they're both fast and very good at that kind of detailed work. They don't get tired. They're going to be able to find even the small differences. So that's why we want to go to automated proofreading. Now, how does that work? Well, the same way, really. You give the computer a working file and an approved file, and you ask it to find all the differences between those two files. Those differences are going to get highlighted, and then the computer will generate a report for you that says, oh, I found these number of things that were wrong, or that were not wrong, but different between your two files. There's really two big ways to do the comparison, and we're heading to that slide already. And the first one is graphics inspection. Now, what graphics inspection means in this context is that you compare visually the two files to each other. So you're really comparing the graphics of the files. We're looking at all the pixels on file A, all the pixels on file B. We're matching the position, and we're going to give a difference if two of those pixels don't match. So if I have a black pixel on my approved file where some text may be, and that area is white on my sample file, the system is going to say, oh, there's probably something missing here because you have a white pixel value instead of a black pixel value. Now, if every pixel that was different was going to give us a problem, then you'd have hundreds and thousands of problems depending on the resolution of your file. That's good timing. The resolution of your file and the fact that, for example, opening a PDF in two applications might already shift a line of text 1 pixel down. You wouldn't consider that a problem, but the system would say that's 1 pixel difference. We're going to highlight all these pixels and give you a problem. So configuration is key. We're going to configure the inspection software to only give us a difference if enough pixels are different enough. So we're looking for groups of pixels that have shifted position or that have changed by a great enough margin to be considered different. That margin, that configuration is going to be different for every company that is using this kind of software, because it greatly depends on, one, the kind of files you're processing, and two, what is acceptable and what is not. If you're processing graphic art files for packaging, for food, for example, then you're going to have lots of complicated graphics objects and less text, for example. And you might not worry about a missing period. So you're going to have to be slightly less sensitive in your inspection because big graphic elements have a tendency to have bigger changes. If you have a pharmaceutical company and you're looking at the inserts with the instructions on how to take a medication, then a missing period would be a very big problem. You don't want to be missing even small things in those kind of things. So what is considered acceptable is different there, which means that when you purchase software like this, the first thing that you really have to do is throw a whole bunch of files at it. You will have to inspect 10, 20, 50 of your average files and try to figure out the configuration for these files until you hit every actual problem and as few as possible false positives. Why do I phrase it like that? Because you're always going to have false positives. Like I said before, the configuration is only going to tell you what is considered a difference. The application does not tell you what is considered a problem in the file. Why is that? Well, because it doesn't know. If you have, for example, a text that went from regular fonts to a bold font, that would be highlighted as a difference because it would be looking different enough to hit that configuration. Now, that bold text in packaging could mean that it's an allergen. In that case, you want it in bold. So the fact that bold changes, that is the style of the font changes, could be considered a problem and should be detected and hit as a difference. In another situation, when you have a text document master file and you're comparing to a sample file and that thing becomes bold, that is actually what you want to happen. So it's not a problem. So you are going to have to say that it's not a deviation, while the software is going to suggest that it is. So that's kind of what we're dealing with here. So what do I have here as well on this slide? Hard copy inspection is possible. Well, the applications that we're talking about for content compare do have an option to compare a digital file, so an individual artwork for something, with a press sheet. So you can compare a single input to a step and repeat press sheet output where you have 3x5 packagings on your sheet. It's going to inspect your single input file with each of these repeats on the output, and it's going to list you the differences for each of the repeats if there are any. So that's hard copy inspection. To be able to do that, you need a good big scanner that is able to take a sheet from the press, scan it in, and then tell you like that image in the application to tell you the differences between the original file and the press sheet. All of that is graphics inspection. So we're still looking at visual differences. What kinds of differences can we expect here? Well, missing stuff that has moved, stuff that has visually changed appearance in some way. This could be that it's changed in how it's placed. That could be that it's changed in the color. Anything that is a big enough difference in pixels would be hit by graphics inspection. The second big inspection that we can do is a text inspection. Text inspection is not looking at what the words say. It's not looking at what the text looks like. It's looking at the Unicode values behind them. That has advantages in the way that the formatting of the document doesn't matter. You can compare a Word document or a PDF text document to a layout artwork file. You could compare two artwork files to each other. You could compare stuff that is using different fonts with each other. Like the layout file doesn't need to be using fancy packaging fonts. It can just use Arial. And you can compare it to your artwork file. Because a letter A in any font is supposed to be using the same Unicode value. Another thing that is important with that is that text cannot be outlined to be able to be used in this kind of inspection, because an outlined text file is a vector file, which means that you're looking at visual things like vectors that do not have Unicode. So you need to have live fonts in your document to be able to do this. The font itself does not matter. You can compare Arial to something else. Font styles can be checked, but don't have to be checked. Like I said before, if a text is bold or italic, you can keep that as part of your inspection and give you a hit if the styling changed, but you don't have to. So that's a choice. You can turn it off or on. And then we have the formatting that I just spoke about. Like it can be layout into an artwork format, or it can just be a text file, and that is fine. So that's text inspection. And then there are a few more things you can inspect in these files. The applications that we use have a barcode inspection and a braille inspection as well. So with barcode inspection, you would be able to select the barcode, have it decoded, and you can check the value that's in the barcode. And then you can also get a grade based on an ISO standard. So if you check your barcode, it will say, oh, this barcode is grade A to F, depending on how many pieces of the standard it hits as good enough. With Braille, it's a similar thing. You can translate the Braille because not many people can read Braille by eye. So you can translate the Braille, know what it says, you can compare it to another version of it, and you can get a grading to see if the dots are big enough, if the spacing between the dots is big enough. Stuff like that is very important, so it can be inspected. And that's kind of as far as we go with the presentation. It's a pretty short presentation. So I'm going to go into a practical demo that I made for this cafe, because it's going to be a lot more interesting to see it happen than to hear about me talking about it. So this is, let's keep working. This is InformaIT, Informa Content Compare. It is an online platform, which means that when you have a license for this software, you're getting a login to a platform where you can compare your files. You can have multiple users that can each have their own login to check documents in the file. Those users can be in the same company. So the software can know that all of these users are part of the same company, and you can have levels of authority amongst those users. So you can have an admin user that can do more things with files or with the results of inspections, and you can have people who are just able to do an inspection and that's it, and somebody else has to judge the results. So all of this is part of the user management that you have available inside the application. So if I go to my menu on the top right, we can see that I have user management, and in there I have my users. I also have my inspection history. I have my configurations for how sensitive my inspection should be. All of that is in that menu. Then I have my 3 inspections available here. So I have my text inspection, graphics inspection, and hard copy inspection. With graphics, it's going to expect 2 files, digital files that have live text to compare to each other. With artwork, it's going to expect 3 digital files that is going to do a visual inspection on. And with hard copy, it's going to expect a digital file and a scan of a printed file to compare to each other. We're going to do a graphics inspection first. So I'll just click that, and then we get this upload screen. So I can take files from my Finder. So I have an original packaging. This is my master file that has been inspected by somebody at my company that decided that file was okay. And I have a sample file, which is a new version of it made by an artwork person, or it's a file that has gone to pre-flight, or whatever this file is that you want to inspect. Typically, you can do these different inspections at different points in your company workflow. So if you're going to be designing a product, somebody is going, at legal usually, is going to be deciding what information has to be on this packaging and in what way it has to be on this packaging. So you're probably going to have a text document that has a text that has been validated by a person at legal that says, okay, all of these items have to be on this packaging. This has been checked, this is correct. Then that file is going to an artwork person. This artwork person is going to take the content of that text file and put it in an artwork file and design a really cool design for the packaging that that text is supposed to be on. But you want to make sure that nothing got lost while making the artwork. Maybe with a copy paste of some text, something wasn't copied. Maybe a text field in Illustrator or InDesign isn't big enough and you're losing a little bit in overflow. Stuff like that. You want to make sure that you have all your content on your packaging. That would be a text compare. Then we can have a graphic compare, where you can take that document that the artwork person has made that has been validated compared to your incoming master file, your text file. That validated document can be compared to the document at the end of pre-flight, so the document before it goes to press. because that's the document that's going to be printed. So you want to make sure that amongst whatever happens to your file along the way, between the validation and the print, that nothing removed anything. If you go to pre-flight and you do flattening or color conversions or I don't know, whatever you want to do in your pre-flighting, and you lose some content, then you will notice through that inspection. And then you have a third inspection where that document that has gone through pre-flight can be compared to the document that has been printed, and you can make sure that you didn't lose anything on press. Like if there's a scratch on the printing plate and you lose a bit of content there, you will find out by that inspection. So that's basically 3 places in your company production that you can use this. I got a question in chat asking me if it can be done with large documents like books or novels, and the answer is yes. You can have as many pages inspected at the same time as you wish. So if I have a master file that is 200 pages, I have a sample file that is 200 pages, I can compare those to each other. If I have a master file and that is imposed and put on a printing plate in an imposition scheme, I could compare that as well, but that might be a little bit more tricky because you'll have to somehow have the original text match with the imposed text. And if the automatic detection doesn't match it up properly, you're going to have to do that manually and select pieces of text to be compared to each other. So then it becomes a bit more tricky. Okay, I have my files selected. I have a preview here. I'm going to make this Zoom thing that you guys can't see somewhere that it doesn't annoy me. So I have my 2 files here. I have my preview here. I can look at what this file contains, which gives me a preview image. It gives me a bunch of layers in my artwork file, and it gives me all the channels that are available. And I can do the same thing on the other side. So doing this already gives me some options that I didn't have before. Apparently, this file has a layer 6 that this file doesn't have. That shouldn't give me trouble, but you can already see that some stuff is different here than it was there. I can have a look at what happens if I remove the background, for example. Will that break anything? Oh yeah, apparently it does, because my entire background is on that layer. That makes sense. Stuff like that. So I can have a look at this. I know that I'm not going to want to compare my cut and crease because those aren't printed colors. So I'm going to have to deactivate these, but I'm going to do it in the next step. So I have these 2 files. I can look at all the pages, but this file only has 1 page. And then I have my settings, and the settings is the profile I want to use to inspect these files. I can go through this list. The default profiles in InformaIT are quick and filter, and both of these have an option with text compare. That means that I can actually do 2 inspections at the same time. If I want to do a graphics inspection, and I'm also going to do a text inspection, I can do both inspections at the same time by selecting that. If I select one with text compare, I also have to select my text setting. If I select it without, I obviously don't have to do that. So let's first do an inspection without. Now, there are selection templates, and these templates are interesting as well because they save you some work. If you know that your file is always going to have a cut line that pretty much indicates the outer edge of your documents, then you can make it so automatically when you want to inspect files, it will inspect everything inside the cut line and it will ignore everything outside of the cut line. That could be useful if you know that that's always going to be the case. In this case, for demo purposes, I'm going to do a manual inspection. My chat window highlighted again, so let's have a look. Can you check if a document meets a company's branding guidelines, specifically fonts, size, use specific colors used? Yes and no. As I said before, the comparison is happening between 2 documents. So if you have a document that is correct, that is following guidelines, you can find out that another document is not doing that. If you're talking about branding guidelines in the direction of fonts and font sizes used and specific colors used, that would be easier to do in pre-flighting with, for example, PDF Toolbox, because you can check through pre-flight if a document has specific fonts present, or, for example, not fonts that you don't want present in the file. You can also check if fonts have specific sizes. You can also check if specific spot colors are present. So using a pre-flighting tool like PDF Toolbox could tell you if any of these things is wrong. if you have a good master file, you could also find out that your sample file is different to your master file, and then you would kind of have the same result, except you need to have a good master file. This is always about comparing file A with file B. So I can click on manual selections, and that brings me to the next step where I have to indicate what I'm actually wanting to compare. Why is this necessary? Because sometimes your master file has, for example, context on it. Then it is not just the same size and the same documents, but it's part of a bigger sheet that contains the internal codes for that packaging, who has worked on it, when it was validated, what market it is for, all kinds of information that could be relevant for that packaging could be on a master sheet, and you don't want to compare that because it's not going to be part of your sample. So then you have to make a zone on your sample that has that inspection. If you see my two files, you can already kind of have a look and see if you can find all the differences. I'm not sure how big the screen is that you're seeing. I can go back to zooming in a little bit and seeing if that helps, because I didn't even mean to zoom out. That was accidental. The mouse is kind of sensitive. You can see how many differences you can find, and at the end of the inspection, we'll see if you had all of them. Go ahead, and if you want to make a guess, put it in chat, and we can have a winner in about 10 minutes when we finish the inspection. So we have our two documents, and I'm going to have to decide what I want to inspect. So I have this color tab, and like I said before, I don't want to inspect my cut and crease. Those are not printed colors. They're not important to me in this case. I am going to select my cut layer as a cutting line. All of these are separations, so spot colors count as separations, so they can be used in this manner, and it will be able to detect what is using the cut line, which is the red line in my documents, and see the outline of my shape that way. So I can say confirm, and we'll see that it turns everything outside the cut line red, and everything inside the cut line is the area that I still want to inspect. Give it a second, there we go. So it correctly identified the area I want to inspect, which is kind of important because we're inspecting pixels with the other file. So if it doesn't know, like if the positioning is slightly different, then it doesn't know how to match up those pixels. So it's always good to be able to use a die line, for example, to know where we are. This doesn't mean I have a zone. It just means I'm ignoring everything that's red. So I still have to make a zone in my file. And I can do that by just clicking this button, then I get the big yellow zone. I click the little plus icon, and that zone gets a number 1. That is my inspection zone 1. Now, zone 1 is going to be compared to zone 1 on the other side. I can do it in 2 ways. First of all, I can start by doing the same thing I did before and making sure it ignores everything outside the cutting line. Then I can do the same thing and just go to my zoning tool, select the whole page, and say this is now zone 1. So the same way I did before. Or if I'm not sure where my area is, I can ask my tool to tell me. So if I press this button, the loop icon here, the magnifying glass, it's going to try and detect on the other side if it finds a matching area. Oh, it finds a matching area, cool. Then I just have to click the plus icon and I have my zone 1 on the other side as well. So that helps you make easier zones if you're not inspecting entire documents, but only parts of documents, for example. Okay, so I have my 2 files selected. I'm going to click the compare button. So if you wanted to make a guess as to the amount of differences, the window is closing, and I'm going to just click compare. Now we get to this window. It has to render the document. So my PDF file had layers and objects and live text. To do the visual inspection, it needs to render the document as an image because it needs to have the final pixel values for every pixel in the image, and we have to do flattening and all that kind of stuff to know what those pixel values are. So it's rendering the pages. After the rendering, it's going to do the comparing, and then it's going to process deviations, which means making a list, basically, and telling me what the stuff is that is beyond what my profile said was allowed. Now it automatically opens a second window where it starts with highlighting the differences, but I kind of want to go to the first tab first and have a look at what this looks like. So for a purely graphics inspection, using my original PDF as a source and my sample as a target, I have found 9 deviations that are purely graphical. It says deviations found, but it hasn't judged them yet. I still have to say which ones are actual problems and which ones are not. And I can do that in a few ways. I can just scroll down the list see my highlighted differences and make comments and say, oh, this is a pretty big color difference. Yeah, I think I care about that. It might be a brand color. So I can say color difference, gotta fix this, period. And then I say this is a deviation, and it gets a big red bar. And I know that I have that the person who sees this report is going to have to find out why this color changed in this manner. In some cases, you also get an automated offer with graphics inspection. These are just these standard answers. If you want something special in this list, that is possible. We can add more generic comments based on what you want to add there. So in this case, I'll say needs verification, and I'll say add, and that gets added as a comment here. Now, the other window we were in is a zoomed up window that has like a pretty big modes showing each of the differences in their area. So I can zoom in and out, and I can see where this problem actually is, because in this window, I'm only getting the problem. So I don't necessarily know where it is. I also have the overview mode that gives me the full screen, and I have the edit mode where I can see the zones that have been found, and I can actually change these a little bit if I want to. Like I can put stuff together, cut stuff apart, stuff like that. Something else I can do here is open both this window and this window. So these are the same windows that we had before in the list view, except with this one, it's flashing. So it's a lot more obvious what the difference is than if you have to judge it by the highlighted zones. So this is pretty cool to use. And this is the same comment field that I had on the other side. So in this case, I say, is a deviation okay? And it automatically pops to the next one and gives me a highlighted view. So in this case, we're losing some of the bold. The ingredients bold becomes less bold because it says sample source target. So when the S is red, that's the source, and the source is pretty bold, and the target is less bold. Do I really care about that? Not for that word. So I'm going to say not a deviation. Okay, go to the next one. This is pretty much a similar thing. So the email address goes from semi-bold to bold. I might care about it because it's branding. I want to have people on my site, so I say it's a deviation. Didn't add a comment. I could have added a comment. Again, bold to not bold. I think we want it to be bold. The target is the bold one. The source is not. This might be an allergen or something in the ingredient list. So I'm going to say not a deviation. Even though it's clearly a difference, it's not a problem. So I'm not reporting it as a problem. I'm saying, okay. And let me go to the next one. Who knows better what penguins like than penguins, or who knows better than what penguins like than killer whales? That's kind of a difference. So I'm going to say is a deviation. And even though that is a text thing, and this thing is also a text thing, it's going from a period to an exclamation point, it is actually not noticed as a text problem. Like the application didn't care that this text changed from penguins to killer whales. The application cared that there is pixel differences here. There is a bunch of black pixels that moved. That's what the application cares about, not whether or not it says a certain word. When we do a graphics inspection, in text inspection, that is what it's going to care about. I'm going to say that's a deviation, and then this is a pretty big one. My penguin kind of hit his head and became a bit cross-eyed. So I'm going to say, yes, that's also kind of a problem. I want to get this penguin better. So I'm going to say, okay, that is a deviation. Then we have one more, a date got added, but this blank space in the document is meant for that. If I zoom out in this document, the blank space there is actually meant to put a date on, because it's meant to like print the expiration date or stuff like that when the packaging gets printed. So in this case, not a deviation. Okay. And this has changed from 26 streets to 28 streets is a deviation. Okay, and that should be the last one. So I don't get another pop-up. If I go back to my results screen, we see that every single element now got a green or a red banner, and I have no more deviations that have to be judged, 6 that are considered problems, 3 that are not problems. Now, one more thing I can do here while I'm in the deviation view actually is I can inspect my barcode. So my barcode and braille inspection are here on the bottom in this deviation screen. And in here, I can say, okay, I want to inspect the barcodes. I can zoom out on my document, move this box to where the barcode is, drag it over the entire barcode so we can inspect it. And then I click the little check mark to have that be inspected, which opens another tab because it's going to give me the result of the inspection. Oh, my barcode seems to have an F grade. Now, the F grade, we can see why it is an F grade. It's a code 39, which so it's checking according to the standard for that code. The bar width is too small. Apparently, I have bars that are less than 0.19 millimeter wide. I can check the narrow bar width. Apparently, it's 0.15. So the narrowest bar in my code is too narrow. That could cause problems with readers. It's not according to the standards, so it pops up as a problem. Another problem is the white space on the left is too small and the white space on the right is too small. It should be at least 1.5 millimeters and it's 1.47. So it barely it doesn't make that. Okay, it's a failed thing. Even though the contrast, the reflectance, the edge contrast, all of these are A scores, the overall code gets an F grade because we have problems that the thing doesn't like. I could say I don't really care about that and say it's not a deviation, or I can accept the F grade and say it's a deviation. If I'm done with my judgment here, I can just close the tab and that will now be part of my report. Similarly for Braille, I could press the Braille button, select Braille, and get the same kind of translation and grading for Braille. I tried to make that work on my packaging, but I couldn't get a proper Braille on my packaging that was also read correctly. I don't know where to get that really. Tried some stuff from the internet, but it wasn't very effective. So I'm done with this inspection. I can go back to the result of comparison and I can say complete report. That will generate a report file. And that report file contains everything I need to know to be able to reproduce this and to explain what has happened. It says this is the source file, this is the packaging, the sample file. It's the graphic inspection was done at this date, at this hour, by this person on this IP. It has 9 deviations, 6 of them are considered real. The CMYK profile used was swap. The graphic settings used were these. I had hidden these colors, all the information that I need to know. Then I have a page for my master file. This is the master, this is the sample. This might be the sample file that detected all the differences that I have found in this file. I have my selected area for this file for both of them. Then I have the source area again listed, and then I have all the differences. So they're listed in a list form. The first deviation I added was deviation 1, source was blue, target is cyan. There is a color difference, I gotta fix this. And now someone can go through this list and go fix all of these problems and then push the file to a new inspection later down the line. I got to sign this because I have to prove that I did the inspection. So I'm signing this with my account. I can add an extra comment and I can click sign. And now, depending on how your system works, you could have another person that is enlisted in the hierarchy that gets an email that says, oh, somebody did an inspection. You got to go confirm that their judgment is correct, that this file has to be remade. And just like that, you can work that through. Now, I could do a second inspection and include text compare, or I can just do a separate text compare. So let's do that. I have to, again, upload a source and a sample file. And in this case, I'm going to use a PDF document that is a file from legal that contains my text. So I can upload that. I can get my Finder back and get my same sample file that I used before. Put that. I got some tool here that tries to mimic the Windows mechanic of putting stuff on the edge of the screen. That was blocking my selection here. So there we go. I have my legal PDF and my sample. Again, I can have a look at these files. We can see now this file actually has 2 pages. There are no layers, it's just using CMYK. I'm going to use a normal or a leaflet setting. I can choose, and you can immediately see what is being inspected. So if I click on advanced, I can see I am inspecting bold and italic. I should probably turn that off because it's going to give me false positives because I'm not caring about bold in this master file. I'm checking for case sensitivity. I'm ignoring hyphenation. I could compare the color, but then again, everything is going to be wrong because this is black and there is some color in the sample. And I can also check minimum text size and critical items. And if I check that, I have to define what is critical. I haven't done that, so it can't do that. So then I'll say manual selections, and we got our two files again. And it's a similar thing as before. In this case, I'm going to have to select which areas of my master file I want to compare with which areas for my sample file. So I have my front page. Obviously, nothing on here has to be compared to the sample. I got my second page where all my content is, and the person who made this was so nice that they put it in clear columns, so I know where to look for certain pieces of this. So this something is on the front, on the back, info, ingredients. I know where to look for that stuff. Now, there are a few ways to select that stuff. Again, I can make a zone like this. Just drag a box. This is now zone 1. And I can drag a box on the front here and include the same stuff that I had before and say this is now zone 1. And then I have one zone selected. Sometimes you want to select pieces of a text instead of everything. In that case, you can use this thing. With this one, you can drag over the area of the text that you want to compare. And I want to say, okay, I want to compare all of this up to the last point in this case. In some cases, when you have, for example, language switches, that can be very useful to use on the sample because you have one nice square box on the master to select, but on the sample, it breaks off and starts a new language halfway through a line. You can't make a nice rectangle. Again, I can use that search functionality to look for the same content on the other side. It didn't quite find everything. It's missing the rest of this thing, so that's not going to be correct. So I'm going to just say here, that's zone 2, and here I'm going to make a box anyway, because otherwise we're going to end up having unnecessary differences. So I'm going to select that area. Then we're doing the same thing for the info, which includes the website address. So I'm going to select that here. And I have one more selection to do, and that is here with the ingredient list. And it doesn't matter if I do it the other way around, as long as my zones have the same number. So now these are both number 4. It says extra info. This will contain a barcode and a best by date, so I know what to expect. All fine. Compare. And this time, like we said before, we're not caring about what it visually looks like. We're caring about content differences. So we have 3 differences. The first difference is, well, it said penguins, now it says killer whales. And this time, if we hover over this, we can see the Unicode information. So it says penguin, so P is 112, E is 101, N is 110. It gives me the Unicode value for each of my letters. With killer whales, it says, oh, this says whales. So it's 119, 104, 97. These are different values, so it's a different thing. And my automated comment here should also be able to tell us, well, that should be penguins. So I can just click that and it's able to add that comment in there. I don't have to type that. If I want to know where this problem is, I can just click the text and it's going to give me a preview of, if I click killer, it's going to be killer that it's in the preview. That is part of my document. Or again, I can go to my deviation view and I can have a look at my differences by opening this window and this window. And if I open my comment window, it's not giving me the option right now. Well, anyway, I can just look at those differences on my master as well. So here we have, this is a period, this is an exclamation point, same thing. That is a deviation. And the third one, it said fishes, and now it says fish. I can say, well, that's fine, because fishes and fish are both plural forms of fish. So that's like, okay, that's fine, I'm not going to care. Not a deviation. We have the bold text that wasn't inspected this time. If I want to redo my inspection and include the filter for bold, I can select bold again and then say rerun. Now it is going to cancel some stuff that I did before. Fine, I don't really mind that. And now we have a bunch more hits. We have another 3 deviations here. In this one, it says penguin treats. And if I hover over the A here, it's going to tell me that the difference here is because it used to be bold. Oh, it is bold now, basically. So this text is bold. That's what the green A means. It says font noteworthy bold size. And here it's just Calibri and it's normal. So it says this became bold. Well, in this case, that's not a problem. So I'm going to say, okay, the same thing here. This became bold because it was just text before. That is fine. And then we have another one here. Oh, it says now there is one more difference, not just fish and fishes. It also says squids became bold. I should care about that. And in this case, I can say that is a deviation. Squids should be bold. And I can say, okay, I'm done. Complete report. Oh, I left something unmanaged. This is a problem. Deviation. Complete report. Okay. And then it's going to give me the same type of report we had before. But this is actually an interesting one as well, because in this report, it indicates the differences a bit differently than it did before. Namely, it is going to, oh, actually, well, yeah, it's in red. I expected it to give me the Unicode values, but here we go. So it's in red, penguins, and it's in blue, killer whales should be penguins. Point periods, this is the bold difference, the text difference, bold difference, and it says, oh, this changed, bold italic. So it's very clear what actually the problem is in these scenarios. Then I say, yes, that is done. And I can park this file. Oh, it didn't add my login. There we go. Sign, and it's stored in history. And just like that, I can go to my history as an admin or whatever, look at a filter for today. So if I say what has happened just today, oh, I have to put the end date on today first, otherwise the start date can't be today. Search, and I have done 2 inspections today. One was a text inspection, one was a graphics inspection. I can look at the details for these inspections, and I can download the original files and the report and see exactly what has happened and judge that again. So that is kind of what the inspection does and how it works. You take your master, you take your sample, you put it together, and you get a list of all the differences between those 2 files, both for graphics or for text, with the differences we already described. With the hard copy, I don't have a hard copy file ready, but basically you can load a TIFF image, a scan, that can then be compared instead of using 2 digital files. So this opens up chat again. If anybody has any questions or comments that they want to add, feel free to unmute or put something in chat, and then we can have those. And other than that, I want to remind everybody here that there is another cafe coming up 2 weeks from now, I believe, about InSoft Imp, where someone from Imp is actually going to be present as a guest presenter to explain all the new stuff in the new Imp version 12 that has been released recently. It's a cool application for very smart imp positioning. So if you have worked with Imp before, or if you're just curious about the application, that is definitely a must watch. I also want to remind everybody that this cafe has been recorded and will be put on our YouTube channel. If you want to rewatch something down the line, that should all be present. If you want to show it to someone else and be like, hey, this looked cool, you can do so. And all our previous Four Pees cafes are also on our YouTube channel. By now, that is probably 40 to 50 different cafes about all kinds of subjects. If you're curious about anything to do with our applications, go have a look. You can comment on the videos or send us emails if you have any questions about anything. And if you have any subject that you don't find any videos for, but you think this is an interesting subject that Four Pees could do a video about, 40 minutes, 50 minutes video about, just send us your requests and we'll have a look at them. We can always use more interesting subjects to inspect. And we do have several experts at our company about all kinds of different subjects. So we can probably find someone that knows enough about it to give you a proper, well, insight in what's going on. I haven't seen any new messages come into chat during this whole reminders speech, so it's probably pretty clear. If you want to have a personalized demo about InformaIT, about the content compare, also just send us a message. We can set something up. If you send us some of your files, we can actually use your files in the demo, so you can see it work with your files with realistic differences and not just with a cross-eyed penguin, which might help you see more of the realism involved in this. Other than that, I'd like to wish everybody a good evening And we hope to see you back in the next cafe 2 weeks from now in SoftImp. Future cafes will be listed on the website on the events page. We will spread them out more now because we've been doing them every week. We will spread them out more every 2 weeks from now on. We'll see how that goes. Okay. Yeah, no more questions, no more people unmuting, nothing in chat. Have a good day, everybody, and we'll see you next time.